During an interview with Patrick Bet David, Raytheon whistleblower Eric Hecker reveals that he is likely an unwitting asset for the CIA.
But you're saying you've never been involved with CIA, you've not done anything with the IA, that's not something you've done in the past before?
I have never been directly employed by any of those companies, alphabet agencies, however you want to title them. But having looked backwards, I question the proximity that I was to them. I may have been some sort of unknown asset, but I can tell you that certainly I was involved in peculiar activities 24 hours a day.
Through his billionaire handlers, Hecker was sent to Antarctica as a plumber and given full security access. He claims to have seen directed energy weapons that are capable of creating earthquakes, and seems unaware of the obvious, that he was sent there by his billionaire handlers to do exactly what he's doing now, saying that the government is creating earthquakes. It's interesting to note that even though they happen constantly and are often devastating, there is no official public earthquake reporting. The Dutch Since channel on YouTube stands out as the premier source for up-to-date earthquake information. For over a decade, Michael Janich has been using USGS data made available to the public and reporting on it, kind of like a weatherman for earthquakes and volcanoes. He has successfully predicted several earthquakes over the years, using simple methods he learned from years of observation. Janich has come under fire from government officials in the past, but they have now convinced him to stop. It appears as if the government doesn't want anyone looking into earthquake activity and wants you to think that they are creating them. And maybe they are. But in the late 1940s, the US government discovered evidence of a coming magnetic pole flip. This information was initially classified and was immediately followed by the beginning of the unscientific global warming hoax. The CIA censored The Adam and Eve Story by Chan Thomas, which describes cataclysms that cause advanced civilizations to vanish from the earth without a trace. According to official records from commander of Project Nanook, Major Maynard White, the US government discovered in the late 1940s that the Earth undergoes major magnetic flips about every 10,000 to 12,000 years, which causes the surface of the Earth to catastrophically shift in the space of one day. This information was officially kept from the public. The mysterious Great Pyramid of Giza was built with dimensions that memorialize the golden ratio, pi, and the speed of light, and along with the Sphinx forms a working clock of the Great Year. The Great Year is the astronomical cycle of the equinoxes around the ecliptic, a cycle that repeats just about every 26,000 years, leading many to speculate that the cataclysm is a somewhat fixed event in this cycle of time. Many researchers believe that the Great Pyramid, along with several other ancient structures that memorialize the Great Year, were built to warn us about the recurrent cataclysm. Our sun has its own recurrent cycles, and in almost every cataclysm story throughout history, the sun plays a major role. Researchers have found 11, 88, 200, and 2,400 year cycles, which involve the oscillation between solar minimum and solar maximum. Solar maximum being when the sun exhibits the most sunspot and solar flare activity. Many researchers now believe that this cycle leads up to a recurrent nova of our own sun. Recurrent novas have been observed all over the night sky. The mainstream theory is that stars become congested with atmospheric material and eventually expel this material in an explosive outburst. And there is much evidence that our own sun experiences these recurrent novas, which likely is related to the solar flare and sunspot cycles. The latest research tells us that the sun is more electrical than it is nuclear fusion, and that it has an electromagnetic relationship with the Earth. This would suggest that the magnetic reversals of the Earth occurs when the sun novas. And so the big question is, when will that be? Douglas Vogt has been studying this subject for decades and predicts that a recurrent nova will next occur in 2046. He arrived at this date based on sun cycles, as well as biblical coding. The Mayan long count calendar began in 3113 BC and was marked by days, not years. 1,872,000 days. Nearly all sources brought the Mayan calendar to an end in 2012 by dividing the number of days by 365.24 days in the year. But Jason Brashears of Archaics.com points out the fact that prior to 713 BC, there were 360 days in the year. In 713 BC, all the civilizations of the world changed their calendars to add 5 days. In Persia, these extra 5 days became known as the bad luck days. In ancient Mexico, the useless days. And for the ancient Maya, the unlucky days. When we adjust accordingly, we have 864,000 days before the calendar change and 1,008,000 days after, which brings the Mayan calendar to an end in 2046. This also raises the question, what happened in 713 BC? According to the Bible, 86,000 people were killed by an angel that year, followed by God moving the sun by 10 degrees. Perhaps one of these cataclysms occurred that year. Ben Davidson of Suspicious Observers has been closely analyzing all this scientific data, and based on the rate of decline of Earth's magnetic field, he concludes that the solar nova will occur between 2040 and 2060. And Suspicious Observers, who have been covering this subject for years, is saying that we are in it right now.
It is important we review the 2 recent studies confirming that we did have a mini geomagnetic excursion in the middle of the Holocene about 6,000 years ago, first found in China and then confirmed in volcanic flows in Russia. We have added it to the list of officially confirmed excursions in recent history. We do appear to have magnetic changes on the planet every 6,000 years. There are several studies one could look to for the fairly perfect lineup of these geomagnetic changes on Earth, with major environmental disasters, including the peaks of species extinction. And there's no mystery as to why. The magnetic field of Earth, which protects our planet from space radiation, weakens tremendously in these excursions and becomes misaligned with the poles, leading to major influx of space energy to Earth. NASA scientists and others declared in the year 2000 that we had lost 10% of the magnetic field since the middle of the 1800s, and the ESA Swarm magnetic field mission upgraded that number to 15% in their 2010 mission report and update. 10% lost in 150 years, and then another 5% lost in only a decade. That's serious. And several subsequent studies confirmed that the magnetic field has begun changing faster and faster, all pointing to one inevitable conclusion. The cycle is not only due again, but it's happening, and it doesn't take thousands of years, and no, it's no small matter for the Earth and the creatures that live here.
That there are technologies at the South Pole Station that people can't even consider that exist on this planet.
Like what?
Directed energy weapon systems is something that people need to get in their vocabulary fast. The ice cube neutrino detector is not simply a passive listening device as presented for the science that they're claiming it to do. It also has the capacity to transmit. There are embedded in the ice what are called digital optical modules, DOMs. They're about the size of a basketball. The array embedded in the ice is 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. It is the world's largest telescope. And now, because we have proven that it can transmit, it's the world's largest directed energy weapons system. It is responsible for the earthquakes in Christchurch, New Zealand in 2011 on the front end of the year.
How do you know for a fact that that was responsible for that?
Because I was present and I have gone over this with the pertinent people that I will not be releasing their names.
Okay.
But I was on the team, let's just say, and I've confirmed this.
Well,
I've provided documentation from the actual manufacturer's specs. So this unit was constructed, operated, and maintained by the University of Wisconsin, and just like every other device on the planet, whether you're driving an M1 Abrams tank or operating the ice cube neutrino detector, there's operator's manuals that tell you how things work. Right there in that information, free for everybody to find. I found it myself. I was directed to find it, I'll put it that way, and release this information. And it states very clearly that each one of these DOMs can transmit at 2,047 volts each. So these are currently the facts of life.
How do you know? I mean, how do you? I guess what I'm asking is, how did it even come to your attention that this triggered an earthquake? If you're at the South Pole, and New Zealand had an earthquake, I mean, how did you know it came from the South Pole?
Without divulging names,
Without divulging names.
I could only say that it was communicated to me from team members that were present and fully read in at the time, that they were aware. And since that time,
At the immediate, like the same day?
oh, absolutely, it was understood
Well, what was said?
that we accidentally hit Christchurch, New Zealand twice when they were trying to fire up this weapon for the first time. That it was friendly fire. It was not on purpose, but it occurred. That the system is designed for that, and it was just friendly fire.
So this is a telescope. That sounds like a. Is it a telescope? or is-
Absolutely, it is. It is a neutrino detector for sure. It can accomplish its primary purpose. It can also transmit and then provide a multifaceted platform for directed energy weapons systems.
Do you have any idea how the earthquake was initiated?
From misfiring the system,
Where did I mean?
where were they targeting?
Yes.
I don't know.
Does it go into the earth? Does
I
it go
can-
into the atmosphere?
It can definitely go through the earth. I would consider that it might be able to do stuff in the atmosphere. I haven't heard that statement laid at its feet, but I wouldn't put it past it. I don't want to try to limit the functions of this device by my imagination or experience. I believe that's one of the problems with directed energy weapons is they are not like standard weapons of old where you have a gun and a particular caliber bullet, you pull the trigger and it does one thing. These platforms are way more complex than that. They do a lot of things.
What else do they do?
Excuse me. This system, additionally, in regards to the neutrinos, it detects the neutrinos that are apparently coming off of the new exotic propulsion systems for either off-world UFOs or reverse-engineered stuff on our planet.
What is neutrino?
Neutrino is a near massless particle that goes at, close, or beyond the speed of light. It is so small that it can pass between the electron shell and the nucleus of pretty much every atom on the planet. And the capacity of being detected at the South Pole Station when the neutrino impacts the nucleus of the water molecule of the ice in the glaciers at the pole, a reaction occurs. The nucleus and the neutrino become destroyed. A muon is created and ejected, and a blue flash of light known as Cherenkov radiation flashes in the ice, and that's what the DOMs, the digital optical modules, are detecting. That's their primary purpose as presented. Now, whether that neutrino comes from a quasar out in space or a exotic propelled engine off of vehicles that aren't being discussed contemporarily, it detects it, thus making it basically an air traffic control center for all non-discussed vehicles on this planet. So just like we have all the other air traffic on the planet and it's being completely observed and attended to, there's just another level of craft on this planet and another level of air traffic control tower that exists. This is that facility.
Back to tracking neutrinos. What is that? Why are they tracking those?
Oh, for the purposes of science, they're claiming that there's a lot to be ascertained by understanding the difference between low power and high power neutrino ejections from cosmic occurrences. It's about that vague. This is what they spend our tax dollars on.
Let's talk about what else do they do?
The device is also for faster than light communications, quantum entangled communications at great distance. In, I guess it was the late 80s or early 90s, Gary McKinnon hacked NASA. And he found the list of the off-world space fleet and the captains of the ships respectively. We have a fleet out there. If we have a fleet out there, we need to communicate with them. This is that facility.
Can you explain quantum entanglement communications?
Yes, I don't think most people understand what I'm about to say anyway, but I will. The way quantum entanglement works is that you can take two particles, quantum entangle them, and then take those two particles and move them at any distance in the cosmos. And let's just say, for example, if you quantum entangle two electrons and you have them spinning in the same direction, and then you take one of those electrons and you shoot that thing out 100,000 light years from the original. If you then rotate the spin on the one electron, if you modify it so that its spin changes, the quantum entangled electron at any distance will simultaneously, in no time,
switch its rotation also because they're quantum entangled. So these communication systems are taking advantage of this aspect of quantum mechanics that most people can't wrap their heads around. And this is what they're utilizing. It's just the new level of science that affords us the ability to communicate at any distance instantaneously.
I've heard about this. I've tried to dig into it, and it's hard to understand.
It is hard to understand. It would be my best way to put it is that when electricity first came out, it was very hard for a lot of people to understand what Nikola Tesla was getting at. But everyone was using it before they even understood it. And this is just where we are right now. It's just a new technology. It's a new conversation. People don't have to understand it yet. They just have to realize it's real.
What other kind of things can this?
Oh boy. Voice to skull technology. This is also in the foray of directed energy weapons.
What is that?
The ability to, let's just say, throw your voice into your head or my voice into my head, or allowing algorithms that now they can blanket a whole geographical area and they can make everybody change their thoughts. They can, I use the term intrusive thoughts. Back to that fork in the road analogy. If you find yourself where you have to make a decision about something, next thing you know, you catch yourself kind of having an argument in your head with your own voices. Well, the ability to add another one of your voices in there, but have it controlled by somebody else's microphone, so to say, is a very powerful tool. And I think this is a weapon of war that we are seeing happen to everyone around us. The Department of Defense recently started initiating protocols for their employees, their agents, to discuss Havana syndrome-like symptoms. And on that list is that their agents are hearing voices in their head. And this is what they're getting at. This is that technology that, next thing you know, you're trying to make a decision, but there's another Sean in your head that now is actually somebody else's control. And through the manipulation of that voice, they can now push you. Just like we have, the cell phones are weaponized now, the social media platforms, and they can engage with an algorithm, and they know that they can push you in a direction by repetitive information being displayed in front of you, similar to the tachistoscope in grammar school, that they can learn your system and they can learn to manipulate it on a personalized level by just assessing you, what the things are that you're interested in, what are your weak points, what's the crack in the dam, what's the angle of attack. And it's through repetition and access. These are simply electromagnetic impulses in your head. It's not that they can't be read, it's not that they can't be copied, and it's not that they can't be just replayed with somebody else's control. I mean, I could get a voice changing thing and I could sound like you if I wanted to. I could call you on the phone, I could call your loved ones, and I could pretend I'm Sean. And they can do that for you in your own head.